I don't want that. Acceptance and use of assistive technology. The next half hour will be a guided conversation between two colleagues. Katie works with people who borrow from Pennsylvania's Assistive Technology Lending Library all day long. She recently transitioned from a walker to a power chair.
Kim tries to keep up with contemporary research and writing regarding AT and is exploring assistive technology as it relates to aging for her mother and herself.
So by way of introduction, let me just say that Katie is an absolutely bold resistor. She's a lifelong assistive technology user. She's a writer. Her pronouns are she and her. And her job is that she coordinates the statewide assistive technology lending library at TechOWL, which is at the Institute on Disabilities, at the College of Education and Human Development, at Temple University. And yes, it's a mouthful. And you don't have to do the same thing, Katie, on my side.
Kim Singleton is the Director of Assistive Technology. She works for the Institute on Disabilities, the College of Education and Human Development at Temple University. She is a distant caretaker for aging and her ill relatives, and she herself is aging into disability. Her pronouns are she and her.
Katie is a fabulous creative writer. She has a real gift. To get us started, please listen to her poem that she'll read entitled, My Walker.
Running free, flying high, everything to me, you and I, building me up so I would never hide, power, strength, always living inside, sweat down my face, not a care in the world. I had you behind me, my favorite girl. But now I am lost. I am not me. Without you, I don't know who I'm going to be. No choices to be made. Change is here. So suck it up and show no fear. We'll miss you dearly, but I have to get better. Forever in my heart, always walking together.
Thank you, Katie. That kind of sets the tone for how hard it is sometimes to accept and use a tool or a piece of technology that has been recommended. We had no idea that Katie's journey was going to take so long, and that I would have, when we started talking about this project, or that I would have such a personal journey with my own mom. Our question, why not? What can be gleaned from current research and from our own experiences about why this is so hard?
For me, I was born with cerebral palsy. I learned to walk with my walker. And it really wasn't until January of 2019 when I injured my shoulder and tore my rotator cuff that things changed for me. In April of 2019, after I spoke with my doctors, he determined that I needed to start using a power chair. So in April, I had a seat assessment done. And through all this, in the summertime, we went through a lot of insurance denials. And let me tell you, if it wasn't for Kim, I probably still wouldn't have the chair today, because she was really the one pushing me to keep nagging the insurance about these particular issues.
I'm bossy that way.
And in November of 2019, November 18th, 2019, the chair was delivered to the rehab. And let me tell you, when I signed that piece of paper, I cried my eyes out because I knew it was going to be such a big change, and it was a change I really didn't want to face. So, and it wasn't until January of that next year, January 2020, that I took home the chair. So it took me some time to really feel confident enough to take it home and use it independently.
And after you took it home, was it 9 days before we got on an airplane together?
Yes, it was 9 days.
With the chair.
So,
and went to Florida and presented this presentation at ATIA. And that was just last January, before the world turned upside down.
yeah. And there were still a lot of concerns with me traveling. So there was getting used to the chair and traveling at the same time. There was a lot of worry, but we made it through together, Kim and I.
So when we, a little bit about my journey, and then we'll go on. I do have an aging mother that lives out of town. She has some memory issues. She finds technology very difficult to navigate. She lives by herself. She is fiercely independent. And we continue to move through figuring out how to get tools that will make her life easier and safer and help her remain independent. When we think about factors influencing whether or not people want stuff, I think we can look at, we can divide it up into 3 different areas. We can actually look at the actual thing and what factors come around that. We can look at the context, and we can look at the culture.
Factors influencing AT acceptance and use: the actual thing, the context, and the person. Thing factors: the factors attributed to the actual AT item.
How appealing is the AT, or what's the aesthetic of the item? According to recent research in the International Journal of Research and Marketing, aesthetics affects 3 things. It affects what people choose, how long they use it, and how efficient they are with it. So they have to feel like it is appealing in order to use it for a long time and to use it efficiently. I think that's really fascinating. That when something's ugly, it doesn't get used.
For me, I like the chair because it's small, sleek, and not really bulky. And that's important to me, especially because I'm taking care of it myself. I can't have anything too large. How much does the AT cost and who will pay? So my walker that's been with me my whole life, it has an average cost of $450. The chair itself, the power chair that I'm sitting in today, cost about $6,195. And I can't get that number out of my head. So when I saw how much that actually cost, it's amazing to me the big difference between them and how expensive AT itself actually is. It blows my mind. So,
you know, before we go on, I want to just say, if you have any questions, please interrupt us as we go through this conversation. If you have any comments, if there's something you would like to add to this conversation, please do. This is a very funny platform to do this kind of thing. And this is our first time doing it. So does the funding source affect how people accept and use assistive technology? You know, kind of navigating the complexities of funding sources is a huge, huge barrier to getting people what they need. And especially for little kids, but also for adults, by the time you get it funded, there's often a question of whether or not it's even relevant anymore. By the time, you know, for a 3-year-old, their body changes from the time they're 3 until the time they're 4. And if it takes a year to get something, the thing they thought they needed when they were 3 might not be what they need when they're 4. The cost, when I think about my mom, one of the things that I know is that she will use what she pays for. If she goes out and buys something to make her life easier, she'll use it. And I have to say also, if it's a gift from me, she'll use it usually. But if it's just something that's part of a hospital stay, she doesn't have the same kind of buy-in because she didn't pay for it. Now, I don't know that's the case for everybody, but it is the case sometimes.
How practical and useful is the AT functionality? What can my chair help me do? So it can help me travel to work when we were working, and it can help, out of our homes, I should say. It can also help me get out more. With the chair, I realized that I can carry a pizza box now and drive my chair at the same time. Before not having a chair, I could never carry a pizza box, so I never had pizza unless I was with somebody. And that's one awesome thing about the chair.
So Katie, why don't you talk a little bit about where you live and who you live with and or not?
So I live basically 3 blocks from our offices, basically on the edge of campus. I live in a student housing complex because mainly, to be honest, because of bathroom accessibility. But that's where I live. So I live in this confined space. And initially I was afraid to have a chair because I was in this small space and I didn't think the chair would fit. So they're unusual circumstances. I also live on my own, so it's been a pretty difficult transition. I wouldn't say I've transitioned totally from, I don't use the chair 100%. So.
Well, why should you? I mean,
yeah,
nobody sits in a chair 100% of the time.
I think I've, it's just been overall hard, but I'm learning to adjust to the change because there's no other choice.
You know, when you said you were carrying a pizza, what I immediately thought of was, we still need to figure out how to get, or you still need to figure out how to get a tray for that thing.
You mean the chair?
Yeah, so that you can put a pizza box on a tray instead of on your lap.
Yeah, and it's in the works. I just have to have a clearer head with, I think once we have a better plan moving forward on what we're gonna do with situations, I think.
You mean work-wise?
Yeah, once we actually start slowly moving back to our normal routine, I think I'll have to get something like that to help accommodate myself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So about practicalness and usefulness, if it's been my experience that if elders see that something is practical and useful, they will accept it more. For instance, electric can openers are actually a form of assistive technology. They are a thing that helps people do things that they would need help with otherwise. And adapted key holders. In my instance, I've got a really very compromised wrist. And if it's easier for me to turn something in that's adapted than it is to use a very small regular key. These are functional. These are useful. Of course we use them. They're easy, they make sense. Sometimes other people see something as functional and the person that uses it or is the intended user doesn't see it as functional. For instance, my mother was in the hospital last December. They sent her home with a walker, and it made a really wonderful coat rack in her front foyer. She wasn't going to use it because she didn't see that it was practical and useful for her. How easy to use is the AT? How simple is it? What's the simplicity factor? When we talk about our aging, our elders, I am an elder now. I am in my 60s, and I consider myself a fairly savvy digital native, but I'm an anomaly in that. And people who are older than me, who are 70 and 80 and beyond, are typically not digital natives. The writing around designing for elders tells us that, and this is fascinating, tells us that sometimes switches and tangible interfaces, buttons to push, make a whole lot more sense and are much simpler for our elders to use than touch screens. So while some of us may think touch screens, well, for a while they were novel, but now we're just so used to them that they're the easiest way to manipulate things. For folks that are not digital natives, having a switch to push is a more familiar action than swiping a touch screen.
How does the size and shape of the AT match the user? Fit. So the hardest part for me when I first got my chair was the foot plates. I couldn't figure out how to lift them up by myself because I was so weak for a long time that I didn't have the strength even in my arms to lift them. So with the help of a sock aid, I used the sock aid to kind of like hook the foot plates to lift them up so I can get out. But now at this point, I'm a lot stronger than I used to be. So if I need to, I can just jump over the foot plates and out of the chair. Something I thought I would never, I thought I never would gain that type of strength back, but my strength has definitely returned. Not to where it used to be overall, but the fact that it can do that, like if I really need to, is a great feeling.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you didn't need the sock aid anymore. That's great.
Yeah, so I should use it because it's dangerous for me to just jump over them, but the fact that I can do it makes me feel good.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So we're still talking about the actual thing, factors about the actual thing, and how that influences whether somebody will accept that thing. So how many barriers are there before a user gets the AT. How available is the AT is another factor that needs to be considered. Location. Sometimes it's much easier to get access to things you need if you live in a more populated location than if you live in a very, very rural location. Another barrier to availability is that insurance companies sometimes have a closed market with intermediaries determining the access. If something's very expensive, you want your insurance to pay for it. Well, your insurance company is then your only source to get it, and that's a barrier. But I think another thing that needs to be available in order for us to accept a tool or a piece of technology is information. We need to even know that it exists. And we need to figure out how we're going to share that information with people who may need to use it. Technology is changing so quickly that and there's so much there's so much new stuff that's coming out for the general public that has specific usefulness for people who are trying to become more independent or have a functional need. And somebody needs to know that. Somebody needs to have the information about that and share that information with potential users. So the availability of the information about technology is also really important. Katie, did you have any availability issues getting the chair?
For me, my biggest barrier was the insurance. They believed that because I had a walker, I didn't need a chair. Because I had a walker, that means I can walk with the walker. There's no reason for me to have the chair. And little things like that kept arising, and I was ultimately denied 3 times. But I think what really helped us get the chair, or helped me get the chair, was Ken helped find me a health coach that really, he did all the dirty work. He talked to me in detail and found out from me why specifically I needed the chair and why it was so important for me to have it. And probably a few weeks after I talked with him was when I got this, big approval letter in the mail, but I didn't realize at first that it was an approval letter because it was so detailed that it kind of went over my head.
So I think that one of the most fascinating things throughout this whole process was discovering the health coach. I was talking to a friend of mine who actually works at Independence Blue Cross Blue Shield. And she said, well, does Katie have a health coach? And I said, what's a health coach? And she said, that's a person that works for Independence Blue Cross Blue Shield that will become her ombudsman. And then, Katie, how did you actually get that health coach? I didn't even know they existed.
I basically called up my insurance company, and I asked for a health coach. And I was on hold for a while, and I talked with him in detail about my situation, what disability I had. And it was it was like a half-hour conversation. He said basically I didn't have to really do much. I sit in the background, he would do all the work, and he really did. I'm not sure exactly what he did, but I still have the approval letter of why the chair was approved, and it's really detailed, and it's something I'll never lose.
I bet not.
I'll never, it's so.
So now we're going to move away from the actual thing and talk about the factors around culture and context. You know, accepting something isn't just about the thing itself, but it's about the culture and context in which we live.
How positively connected is the user with the professionals? So if it wasn't for my colleagues, I don't think I'd be sitting here talking with you today. My colleagues are the first people, probably my biggest support system when it came to my injury. If it wasn't for them, even recognizing that I was hurt, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't for them, you know, nagging me about going to physical therapy and staying there for a long period of time, I wouldn't have done it. Like, I'm one of those people, you know, like, I don't need anyone, like, I'm not really hurt. I was in denial for a long time. And if it wasn't for my colleagues, I wouldn't have healed. I wouldn't have done the right things because I'm just thick-headed that way. You know, I'm just gonna magically heal and be all right without doing what my body needs. I dealt with a bunch of doctors regarding my shoulder, but specifically I worked with my colleagues found me a doctor who specifically specializes in CP, and she connected me with a good physical therapy rehab location that connected me to some really wonderful professionals, PT and OT. And they've been nothing but positive influences in my life for the past year. They've been so supportive, and so they have a lot of faith in me, and they truly believe that I can get fully back to where I was in time.
So let's talk a bit about the vendor. Did you get along with the vendor?
The vendor is like, I didn't get along with the vendor because I felt like he was selling me something. He was kind of, it was like he was selling something to selling me something so that the insurance would pay for it. He just like, he wanted to get it done very quickly. He assumed he knew what I needed, and we just didn't get along. He's a sales guy. He means well, but like, he'll say anything to get it. A typical sales guy, I should say. Like, and I put on my smiling, happy face whenever I see him, and you know, I do what I have to do. But we didn't get along. But you can't have positive relationships with everybody. So I expected something to, you know, get me all upset, and he did several times. So.
Tim, we have a question in the chat box. Maria's asking if the health coach works for an insurance company, isn't that a conflict of interest? And also she said, typical vendor.
So I think that the health coach, because they work for the insurance company, they were able to surmount the barriers that, I mean, Katie, is that what you thought?
Yeah, I thought so. I mean,
like we were going on, and Katie was doing everything she could to get the chair, and it wasn't until a health coach whose job it was to really listen and understand Katie, but worked for IBX, then went back and talked to the IBX and kind of cleared the path for it.
Yeah, and this, like I mentioned before, this letter is so detailed, why it was completely essential for me to have this chair. And honestly, the health coach did not like even the fact that for a long time, I was only sleeping an hour a night. You know, I couldn't, he saw that as a big red flag as to why just sitting down would calm everything. down, not just the shoulder, but like the CP was kind of, you know, getting all aggravated too. So.
Katie, this is Stacy. I have a question. Is that typical, like when you are under stress, that your CP flares up? Like you have more physical stress when you also have emotional stress?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, it's very typical. So I try to keep my emotions under wrap, but I've gotten a lot better with like trying to control it and knowing, you know.
And so how do those fireworks work out for you, Katie?
Oh, no, it's like last night was my first night in probably a month that I slept really well. So I feel the vibrations of fireworks. So it's almost like they're coming up to me and attacking me, like outside my window. It's kind of strange, but again, it's a CP thing for me.
So culture also is an important thing to consider when you think about whether or not somebody wants and will use and will accept or reject assistive technology. And how is the assistive technology perceived within the user's culture and community? I think for many older adults, they're concerned about privacy, and their culture is to be private, and that can influence, if they believe that a piece of technology will somehow jeopardize their privacy, they're much less likely to want to use it. Also, we can just look at our cultures about whether or not they're individualistic cultures or collective cultures. And there is some writing that says that in more collective, we're all in this together cultures, it's easier for a person to use assistive technology than it is for a person who's in a more individualistic culture. And that may have some interesting implications for where we find ourselves in this country today. I don't know.
How does the AT influence the likability of the user by other people? Social acceptance. For me, my CP and AT, they kind of go together. Because I have CP and need AT at the same time, it can be intimidating. It can be a barrier and extra baggage. And I feel like that to this day, but I've learned, especially over the past year, that I've started to believe that, you know, if someone genuinely cares for me and, you know, really, you know, wants the best for me, they're not gonna look at the chair or my CP or whatever AT I use as a barrier. And I think over the past year, I've only just begun to see that. I mean, I've been through so much this past year, and I'm starting to realize that with different human interaction, that is the case. It's not going to be a barrier or extra baggage with people who genuinely care for you.
So a year ago, you talked about feeling like you were more acceptable and likable in the walker.
Yeah.
And now you're feeling like that's a little different?
I think it's, I'm starting to feel like I'm accepted in both. It's, I'm starting to, like I said, I don't think, like, it's hard to explain. It's people, like I said, people aren't going to view me as work or baggage if they genuinely care. Like, I think I've come across not the right people, or like, I think I've also matured over the past year. Like, I've been forced to grow up. I've been forced to like kind of rip through my stubbornness and just like live life. And just whoever doesn't like you because of your AT or your disability, you know, tell them to,
They don't need to like you.
yeah, they don't need to tell them they're not, they're not a part of your life. They don't need to be a part of your life. The
Yeah.
people that, generally like you, they're not going to care. I mean, I'm not fully there yet, but I've definitely grown up a lot.
Well, or just changed your mind about it. And I mean, it's just an evolution of thought. And we all have those in all sorts of ways. When I think about social acceptance and AT, I'm struck by the change. 10 years ago, I was working with really little kids, and when the iPad came out and we could put a communication application on an iPad and give somebody a voice, we were doing that a lot. And the flip happened, and it was the kids that have devices, especially when they were new and novel and everybody wanted to get their hands on them. Those kids had more social capital at their daycare or their elementary school than anybody else, because they were allowed to have this contraband and use it. And it actually made them, in a funny way, in that time, for that period of time, more socially accepted because they had the cool stuff.
How does the user's inner circle believe in, approve of, and assist with the AT solution? Family and support. For my family, for example, what they say and what they do is completely different. They'll say that they will help me, they'll help me adjust to the chair. And they will, but it's like one big session. And then after that session, it's like pulling them back in. Hey, I need more help with learning how to do this. Can you help me go here with the chair? And they'll do it, and they mean well all the time, but it's kind of like they'll do it when it's convenient for them. And it can be frustrating because they don't always follow through with what they say. But let me say that I love my family and they're wonderful, but it can be frustrating.
So talk a little bit, just briefly, about when you were a child and the AT and your family approach to AT.
I grew up, I'm one of 9 children, and I grew up in a household with not much AT. I frankly didn't know what AT was. So I learned how to live my life as a child with CP in a house that didn't have a lot of adaptations. And they believe that if I can adjust to my surroundings, then I don't need this particular thing. AT is not, if I can adjust, if they put me in a situation, I will learn to adapt and I will adjust. And in a sense that was good, but also very, very frustrating. But I think it kind of rings true because I've been put into situations where, a public restroom wasn't accessible, but I worked around it and used the public restroom anyway. Or even when we were in Florida, learning how to adapt to, getting myself dressed every morning. That was terrifying because I thought I would never night one, I was like, I'm gonna need help. All the days we were there, 3 or 4 days, whatever it was. But that was terrifying. But I learned to adapt.
You are very adaptable.
So.
Katie, this is Stacy. We have a comment and a question. It says, "Hi there, I'm Gabby, an intern at the SIL of Central PA in the Public Relations Department. And she wants to thank you for sharing your story. As an ally, I want to learn more about how I can support you and others on this journey alike. What do you think is the best way we can raise awareness on social media platforms?" Great question.
I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know how to answer that. I don't think about, honestly, I don't think about raising awareness for people like myself. I honestly just move along with life. And I'm honestly somebody that struggles with myself as a person with a disability. And as an adult with a disability, I'm learning every day, every year that I live, how to accept it, how to come to terms with it. Because I was one of 9, and I watched, all my brothers and sisters learn how to walk, and they're all walking around me, and it's been hard to accept. So and it's kind of bad to say, I don't think about raising awareness or anything like that. I feel like we have a long way to go, unfortunately, with people and their disability. And it's negative to say, but it's just, it's from what I see with society, it's a tough road for us still.
So that brings us to these person factors, the factors that are attributed to the actual person.
One second.
So one of the person factors is how user-centered are the decisions being made? How does the user participate in the decision about AT? A lot of times for our elders, they're not. They don't participate. It happens to them. It doesn't happen with them. I think that also is the case for little kids. It happens to them and not with them. I think in my mother's case, during her recent hospitalization, she was sent home, like I said, with a walker and a bedside commode. There was really no conversation with her about that. I think it was probably kind of a CYA. We don't want this woman to go home and fall, so we're going to send her home with this stuff so that we can say we gave it to her. But it wasn't going to be used. I think smart home technology often, we think it would be a great idea for an elder to have smart home technology, but unless we wrap them into the conversation and the thinking about it, and unless it's a user-centered decision, we jeopardize the benefits of the assistive technology. Katie, what do you think about your chair?
For me, I was involved in every decision concerning my chair. Down to the color. The first thing I knew about my chair is I wanted it to be green to signify the Philadelphia Eagles. Because if you know me well, I'm 365 Philadelphia Eagles. So I wanted it to be green, and I down to even the backrest and the seat cushions, even though particularly I don't like them very much right now, these are the ones that I chose, and every decision regarding the chair I made. So
another factor is how the user feels about their worthiness and their right to appropriate assistive technology, or internalized ableism. You know, we all adopt our cultural ableisms, and in this culture right now, in this day right now, we're facing that stuff every single moment of every single day. We incorporate community beliefs into our sense of self. For me, the biggest kind of ism that I face is sizeism. I'm a big woman. You can't really see that from here, but I'm a big woman, and kind of pushing up against sizeism has been an internalized problem for me. When I saw my very small, thin mother being transferred from a gurney into a hospital bed, the first thing I thought was, I can't ever get sick because nobody could do that for me. Nobody could move my body like that. And there's a lot of shame attached to that. You know, for my mother, I think her ableism has to do with how aging influences her losing influence in this world, and how she's less than because she doesn't have the same kind of influence that she did when she was younger and when she was more able. Katie, it sounds like you've made some big shifts in your thinking in the last year, but what would you say about internalized ableism and your journey?
I mean, I have made some shifts in the past year, but a part of me deep down, I still feel like I'm a burden and kind of less worthy than other people. I think that's gonna take some time for me to swallow, and for me to realize that I'm not, because I honestly blame it on society. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think we have a lot of work to do as a society for people with disabilities. I just, I mean, I feel I'm afraid to ask for help a lot, because I think a part of me thinks in my mind that asking for help kind of means that you're weak. But in a sense, I also think that asking for help can be a strength. And I've learned that over this past year that asking for help is a strength, because it shows you, when you ask for help, that person, for example, can show you different ways how asking for help can improve. Like, they can actually show you different ways to do what you're trying to do on your own. Kind of like, they kind of open your mind better, or more wider, I should say. But I still have work to do in regards to feeling like I'm not a burden and less worthy.
We all do. We all
I'm
have.
not.
I'm a lot older than you, and I'm still doing that work.
So, I mean, but I think I've progressed a lot.
Yeah.
So
talking about change over time, has the person shifted their identity as time has passed?
For me, the shoulder injury has definitely changed my needs. My shoulder injury will be with me likely, unless I choose to fix it, which I don't, because fixing it would bring me back a few years in life. because of the CP.
You mean surgery?
Yes. Mhm. Having the surgery would bring me back a few years. I would have to take a leave from work, which I would not want to do. So living with the shoulder injury is something I'm learning to do, and I'm going to learn how to do so that I can live the life I want to live. So it's going to be a part of my life, probably my whole life. Either way, even if the fact that I'm choosing not to fix it, it's changing my life. But if I choose to fix it, it's going to change my life even. It's going to magnify it greatly. Because of the CP, my doctors say that it's going to, the CP is kind of going to contract with the injury, and it's going to slow me down. So it's my best bet is to not have the rotator cuff repaired. So
how does the AT contribute to any shame or disgrace the user might feel? What kind of stigma might the AT make worse by the existence or the use of the AT? I think we've kind of talked a little bit about this. You felt like the walker was better than a chair for a long time, right?
yeah, I still prefer the walker, but I know that I need the chair because I don't want to take laps around, outside of Temple like I used to anymore. I know that the chair is essential because I'm not who I was. I don't wake up every morning and the first thing I feel every morning is my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So
as we end this and open it up for questions and conversation, we'd like to leave you with a poem that Katie wrote called "The Chair."
Open your heart and I can be your friend. I promise to stay loyal until the very end. Here to help you, pick you up, show you you're still good enough, take you where you need to be, fast and furious, strong and free. Just step on the gas and let's take flight. Don't walk away. You'll be all right. The clouds will fade, the sun will rise. Your strength will lift you to the sky. Hold on tight. I am the change. Your arms wide open, but still wanting the same. Afraid to let go, don't want to sit down. Still searching for that love that used to be around. Life happens, and this is it. So take a breath and kindly sit. Here to put your pain to rest. Open your eyes. You're still the best. I'm not the power. It's you. Don't you see? Still fast and furious. Always strong and free.
Wow.
Beautiful. And Vicki said beautiful, powerful. We had a few comments. Agreed.
It's been quite a ride. Hey, Katie?
Yeah, definitely. The chair and the walker, it's just a bunch of tears, I cried my eyes out when I wrote both. So it's kind of like a piece of my heart.
Well, thank you for sharing it so openly with all of us.
Yeah.
We're open to any conversation, any comments that anybody has, any sharing of their own journeys. I think, we all are moving through this life needing different tools and technologies at different points of our life for different reasons. But I don't know that there's any of us who don't.
We have a question. Is there any place that we can see some of Katie's poetry? I think some of them might be shared on TechOWL.
They are.
And I did put the link in the chat box to the presentation that was done at ATIA, which also does include the poems in the slides. Sudan is saying, thank you for sharing. I admire your beauty and strength. Marjorie is saying, Katie, that was a beautiful poem. Neither the chair or the walker is you, as you are so much more a strong and capable woman.
Thank you.
If you have any other comments, please feel free to put them in the box and I will read them.
I have to just give kudos to Vicki Landers and everybody at Disability Pride Philadelphia. Y'all rock. You are killing it.
Yes, I agree. Vicki says thanks.
Well, if there's no more questions, we can sign off.
Thank you both for this, and thank you, Stacy, for handling the chat. I really appreciate you making space in our 30 days to present this. I think these are important conversations that people need to have, and also need to see that there are very different views and different folks, and that we just have tremendous stories to tell. And that is one of the things that I'm working with. Doing Disability Pride really for me is building disability culture and letting everybody see that we are strong individuals. So thank you again for doing that. And thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you are coming back. We're going to have another TechOWL takeover at 3 o'clock with Thomas, who's going to really be teaching us about how to make our web outreach accessible. So thank you so much, and I will see you all soon.